Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grower Podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by sharing exactly what's been going on my allotment, my kitchen garden here in Littlehampton on the south coast of the UK. I've been growing my own for over 30 years now, but I still learn something new every single day. Now, Happy New Year to you. This is the first episode of 2026 and we're off already with a bang because we've headed down to the allotment to start continuing, I guess you could say, getting things into shape. Back in the kitchen garden, I have got our seed of the month. So with all that coming up, let's crack on with it. Well, I'm here on the allotment and I have to admit it was a struggle to get down here this morning. I started off this year with a really horrible cold that really did take it out of me. My wife has it as well, so we did spend a couple of days basically indoors not doing much. But this morning I felt well enough to hit the allotment, so I wandered down here with a view to get a few things done. Now obviously I have to take it easy. It's still pretty cold and I'm still a little bit unwell, but I felt well enough to do a few things. Now the first thing that I did is I always just take a walk around the allotment just to have a bit of a visual on anything that needs any attention, anything that I don't have on the to-do list. And I always start that off at the beginning of each trip. Now, what I noticed when I was wandering around is I had a pane of glass on my greenhouse that has smashed somehow. I don't quite know how. Luckily, it's on Grandad's greenhouse, so it's the average size glass panels, which aren't that difficult to replace. But it's just a bit of an inconvenience. There's another job that I'm going to have to do, including cleaning up all the broken glass pieces, which I quickly done. Didn't take too long. I haven't bothered replacing that glass panel as of yet. I'm not really using that greenhouse at the moment. It is there. It is something we will be using. But at the moment, it's just a little bit too cold, particularly on the allotment, to have anything in that greenhouse when I have a greenhouse at home. Now, the main job that I wanted to tackle this week was in the bottom corner behind my shed where I have a collection of plants grown, and in particular a hazel tree, because it's that time of year where I like to coppice my hazel tree. Now, I grow hazel, one for hazelnuts, which are, well, we do get the odd one or two, but when they are ready, it's a race against time to beat squirrels from getting the hazelnuts. But the other reason that I grow a hazel tree is because I want the hazel sticks from it. And that is why we coppice the hazel tree on a yearly basis. Now what I do is I basically go along at the base and cut all the branches down to ground level, or as near to ground level as I can get, with a pair of sharp pruners. And what this does is it gives me lots and lots of lovely straight sticks, which we will dry out for the next few months, and then we can use those to grow our beans and our peas up later on in the year. It is a really, really simple way to get pea and bean sticks, and best of all, it's on the allotment. I haven't bought bamboo canes for quite a while now, but when I have seen them, they seem very, very expensive these days, and they don't seem as strong as I recall them. So, quite simply, having a hazel tree on the allotment is a great way to stick with that self-sufficiency. And I'm really, really impressed with the huge bundle of sticks that I've got. I've probably got about 50 sticks, which is more than enough for me to grow some good beans and peas up against them. Now, generally speaking, the smaller sticks are used for peas. The larger ones are going to be used for beans. This could be our French beans, our runner beans, basically our climbing beans later on in the year. Probably won't be till May before we start getting those ready to grow. Now, I expected the coppicing of the hazel tree to take quite a while, but luckily it only took me about 10 minutes, so it was a pretty quick job to do. And because it didn't take me very long, I decided to have a bit of a tidy up in that general area. Now, this is one of those areas on the allotment where everything gets forgotten. It's in the corner, it gets a bit messy, there was a few brambles, so I just decided while I was there, let's clear it up a bit, tidy it up, and start making progress on my to-do list of areas that I really want to concentrate on. And this is certainly one of those areas. The gooseberries and the hazel trees, that area, quite a few brambles. But now it's tidied up, the brambles have gone, it looks a lot better for it. All we've got to do now next week is throw down a bit of mulch just to protect the soil and reduce the amount of weeds. I'm going to use a woodchip mulch for that because we have it on our allotment site down at the other end. Now, I mentioned running around with a to-do list earlier, and that is something that I do quite regularly. I do find that having a list really helps get my mind focused on what I want to concentrate on, and it means that when I'm unable to get to the allotment, I can start making plans on what I want to do when I'm on the allotment. Now, one of the top things on this list is concentrating on the areas I've just mentioned, the bad areas that need a good tidy up, the gooseberries, the hazel, the scruffy corner, as I call it, where I've got the cuttings from the elder tree I took down last year, and of course the top part of the allotment where my neighbours have vacated over a year ago. Now, while I noticed in that particular area, nobody has taken on that plot since I last was here. But I've noticed now that winter is here, it is looking like I can actually get in there and cut back the brambles a little bit more so that I can free up my currant bushes and get better access to them. Now, this is going to be a very, very short-lived project because when I cut them back, I'm sure come the springtime they're going to grow back unless somebody takes on that plot between now and then. And I'm really, really hoping somebody would. I know we have long waiting lists for people on our allotment, so I'm surprised nobody has taken it on. I think it's because there's so much work that needs to go into it, but actually it's got a greenhouse frame on it, it's got trees, it's not going to take much to get it into shape. And I'm happy if somebody did take it on to try and help them at the same time if they do. I just really wish somebody would take it on. It certainly would be a really good New Year's present for me anyway. Well, that is what I've been doing here on the allotment. I'm going to head on home to the kitchen garden where we have our seed of the month. In the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the Supporters Club this week. Well, it is that point of this podcast where I ask if you could do me a favour, and that is simply leave a rate and review on your podcast provider. It only takes you a few seconds to do, but it really means the world. It helps us get found by more people. But added to that, if you are enjoying this podcast and you want to help support the work that we do, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. For just £5 a month, you get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts that give you a bit more of an idea what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ, and also give you a few ideas of what you could be doing yourself in your own garden and your own allotment. Added to that, once a month you will also receive our monthly seed pack. And that seed pack contains a collection of seeds that I have carefully chosen to be sown in that very month. That means that those seeds aren't hanging around for months waiting to be sown. You can sow them in that very month. But also included, you get a copy of our mini newspaper. Now, our mini newspaper is something I've been adding a few new features to. You still get instructions on how to sow the seeds that are included in the seed pack. But what I've made this mini newspaper into now is more of a tool for you. I've added extra pages that give you the option for taking notes, writing to-do lists, getting plans in place, keeping track of what you're harvesting, just to try and help everybody who's a member make their vegetable gardening more successful. Now, if that sounds like something you would be interested in, then head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk to find out more and hopefully sign up. We would love to have you there. Well, with that, let's get back to the gardening. Well, I'm back home now and in my potting shed because it is time to start sowing our seed of the month. It is the first episode of January, the first episode for the year. Now, at this time of year, many of us are itching to sow lots and lots of seeds, and certain seed packets will tell you they can be sown now and things like that. My advice, however, unless you know what you're doing and you've got certain tools, is that it's well worth holding off on seed sowing. The reason I say that is that the sunlight levels are not necessarily strong enough or long enough at the moment to really sustain the growth on a lot of our plants. But not just sunlight levels, heat as well. If you've not got heated propagators, it might be too cold for your seeds to actually germinate. Now, one other example I'm going to use for this is tomatoes. Some people will sow tomatoes in January, and what they find is they sow them, they get them going, they're growing well, and then March, April, they suddenly find they're too large to pot them anywhere. They don't have the space for them to go anywhere, so they struggle a little. So sometimes it is well worth holding off and sowing certain seeds until a better time. Of course, I'll be sowing seeds throughout the year and sharing with you what I'm sowing. But the seed I'm sowing this month as our seed of the month is chives. Now, herbs are a great solution. If you are desperate to sow something at this time of year, herbs are a great thing to sow, and chives certainly feel that. What I do is I actually grow these on my kitchen windowsill at this time of year, and I just simply take a smallish pot, fill it up with multi-purpose compost, scatter over some chive seeds, sieve over a very thin covering of compost, and then place those in a saucer of water on my kitchen windowsill and wait for germination. Germination can take 2 to 3 weeks, but once they're growing, because it is going to be warm in our kitchen, they should grow quite well, and we can start harvesting them within a few weeks. And to harvest, I just simply cut a few chives off as and when we need them. Now, the great thing with chives is that they do come back year after year. So I've got several pots out in my garden that have died back at this time of year, but will start growing again later on in the year once the weather warms up. So by sowing now, we get an early start on the chives. But later on in the year, the pot that I have in my kitchen windowsill can go outside, ready for next year. And as I said, they will come back year after year after year. But what you will also find is that the pot of chives, the actual plant itself, gets bigger and bigger and bigger year after year. So we actually get more for one little sowing. This often means that the pot needs to go into bigger and bigger pots, or we need to divide the clumps into smaller pieces as well. Lots of options is what I'm saying, and it is certainly something that I really love growing. It's also good to use as companion plants because being a member of the onion family, they can scare off certain pests that might cause problems to some of our plants. So what I'm saying is it's well worth having a few pots of chives scattered all over the place, and you can start sowing those now on your kitchen window. Certainly something that we do a lot here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. Give it a go. Let me know how you get on. Now, in other news here from the kitchen garden, I've got a bit of sad news to share with you. I obviously, as you know, keep chickens here in the kitchen garden, and this last week we have had some pretty cold weather. In fact, we have had a really decent frost for the last few days, which is quite rare for here, I have to say. We very rarely get a frost here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ in Littlehampton. But the last few days we have had a bit of a frost. Added to that, on New Year's Eve, of course, fireworks were going off, and unfortunately the two together meant that my eldest chicken has unfortunately passed away. This is Gertie. She was 7 years old, so a couple of months ago we lost Bear, who was my eldest chicken, my original chicken, who we've had for 10 years. This was one of the second lots of chickens that we got, and unfortunately she has passed away. Now, she was an old bird, so it's not surprising. Unfortunately, it's a combination, as I said, the cold and the fear from the fireworks. She just wasn't strong enough to make it. As I said, 7 years old. For chickens, that is pretty good going. Now, she wasn't laying any eggs, so in that sense, it's not a huge loss. And it still leaves us with our 4 chickens, including the 2 new chickens that we got a couple of months back as well, which means we are getting 4 eggs a day still, right at this time of year as well. That means we are constantly in supply of eggs, as well as all the other advantages of having chickens, manure, and what I like to do as well at the moment, we get a load of wild garlic growing around my garden. It's a real bugger because it is very invasive and it's very hard to get rid of. But what I like to do is I dig up those clumps and I give that to the chickens. They love it. At the moment, the chickens aren't able to go outside because we're in a flock down. So to get their greens, I have to give it to them from outside. They love it. They go through that wild garlic in seconds. They rip through it, they eat it all up, and they absolutely love it. But unfortunately, yeah, we have now lost Gertie, which is sad news, of course, but it is just the way it is. Now, because of the cold weather and the frost, and also I've had this really bad cold, I haven't been able to do much in the kitchen garden lately, which is annoying. I really want to crack on. I was hoping with time off over the Christmas period from work, I was going to have loads and loads of things done in the garden to really set myself up for the coming year. Unfortunately, it didn't happen that way, but I'm not complaining because I think we have got quite a bit done anyway. It's going to be a promising start to 2026, and at the moment we are looking at seed sowing and how we can do that. But more on that in the podding shed in just a moment. In the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the kitchen this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef's got with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
Well, in my opinion, after you've been working in the garden in the cold, there's nothing like coming indoors to enjoy a nice hot soup. And that is what we have for this week's recipe. This week's recipe you can already find on our website, thevegrowerpodcast.co.uk. It is leek potato and thyme soup. Now, I love leek and potato soup, but I've added a bit of thyme and it really has added a really lovely dimension to this soup. I really enjoy thyme. I've got lots of thyme plants, and in fact in my potting shed at the moment I've got some young thyme plants, and every time I go in there I get this smell of thyme. It is lovely. Now, to make leek and potato soup, all I did is I heated 2 tablespoons of butter. Sometimes add a bit of olive oil when I cook with butter as well. Just heat it gently into a pan to ensure the butter is melted. And then I add in 2 large leeks that I've sliced up with a pinch of salt and just cook slowly for 8 to 10 minutes. And all we're doing is just waiting for the leeks to get nice and soft. Then we add in a crushed clove of garlic and a teaspoon of fresh thyme leaves. Fresh thyme leaves, I just pick a sprig, run my hand across it to pull off all the leaves, and then we add those straight in. We just cook that for about 30 seconds. Then we stir in 2 medium and diced potatoes, and then we pour over 750 millilitres of vegetable stock. We then just gently bring that to a simmer and just gently cook that for about 15 to 20 minutes until the potatoes are soft, at which stage we blend. Now, this could be with a stick blender or a food processor, depending on what you have. I personally like a really nice smooth soup, so I blend it till it's smooth, but some people might like a chunky soup. That's not for me. I like a smooth soup. Now, at this stage, I do like to add a splash of cream just to add a bit of a richer finish, but then we serve it and we thoroughly enjoy it with a nice crusty loaf. This is a delicious treat. Leeks at the moment are right in season. Potatoes are from our store. Absolutely delicious. Go give it a go. Let me know how you get on. Well, I'm back in the potting shed now, and I mentioned just now that it is too early, in my opinion, to sow most seeds. Now, I say that with a lot of intrepidation. The reason I say that is many gardeners, and I see this all the time, are itching, absolutely itching to sow seeds as soon as New Year begins. And I don't blame you. I'm the same, and I have been for many, many years. The thing is, unless you've got heat mats or heated propagators and grow lights, most seeds it's worth holding off, especially when you think that we've just had this really, really heavy frost, which might continue for another couple of days. Seeds aren't going to like that at all. So it is always well worth holding off. Now, I am very lucky. I do have heated mats. I do have heated propagators. I have grow lights. So I can get away with sowing many seeds already. Things like aubergines, chilies, sweet peppers, which really, really early, to be honest, although I find they do better with an early start. But if it wasn't for the heat that I have, then I wouldn't bother. I'd wait until the end of the month. And another great example of seed I wouldn't bother sowing at all throughout January would be tomatoes. Often when you look at the back of seed packets of tomatoes, they will tell you that you can sow those in January. However, the risk is, especially with tomatoes, and even courgettes and things like that, they will get too big before they can even go outside, unless you have a heated greenhouse or something like that. My point being is that don't be in a rush. Hold off. If you do need to sow any seeds right now, then sow the right seeds. Now, sowing the right seeds can be a little tricky. You need experience to really understand what it is. What I've done, I did this last year and I'm carrying this on this year as well. I got AI to come up with a seed that I can sow every single day throughout the year. And I'm actually sharing this on social media and I want to talk to you about it as we do it as well. I'm not a fan of AI, but it is an upcoming technology and I think it is something we don't want to be left behind. But I asked AI to come up with a seed list of seeds that I could sow every single day throughout 2026, based around edible gardening, but tailored to Littlehampton, to where I live. It asked me a few questions back and forth, which was quite nice, and then we got a good list. And the seeds that we've sown this week from it, we started on the 1st of January, of course. We have had winter purslane, pea shoots, radish microgreens and chives. So quite a collection there already of seeds that we could be sowing. If you do want to see what I'm sowing, then please do follow me on social media to get an idea of the seeds that I'm sowing. But I will, of course, share this with you on the podcast as well. My point, again, I come back to, if you are desperate to sow seeds, hold off. Now, this brings me on to one of our other features, our book of the month. Throughout December, I have been reading Gardening with Junk. And when I picked this book up and I saw the title, I thought this was going to be a book that gives you plenty of different projects that we could do with junk. I was expecting pots and planters and things like that, but I was also expecting things that we could make out of, say, pallet wood, potting benches and things like that. Well, I was very, very wrong. The actual title, Gardening with Junk, was actually about what junk we could use to make plant pots with. Now, this was a fairly good touch, I have to admit. I have lots of trees and fruit bushes in pots, and all my pots are mismatching. And I've got to the point now that I really don't like the look of mismatching pots. What else could I use? So I read through this book quite eagerly once I understood what it was about. There was, of course, things like baked bean tins or passata tins that we could use. I actually have ginger and things like that growing in down on my kitchen windowsill. But then we went into things like boots, teacup pots and bigger items that we could use for plant pots. Now, I've got to admit, this book didn't lead me into anything imaginative. There's a few good ideas, but I didn't come away from that feeling like, yeah, I want to do something. And my other thing that I have with upcycling projects, when we see them in a book or we see them on TV or in magazines, they look really easy and they look neat and tidy. But I don't know about you, but whenever I've tried to replicate some of these upcycling projects, what I've turned up with has never been as good as it looks in the magazine or on TV, etc. So I've always felt a little disheartened with that. So was it a good book? It was an interesting read, yes. I didn't buy the book. I got it from a library and I'm glad I didn't buy the book for that very reason. But is it worth a read if you see it in your library? Yes, absolutely. That is Garden with Junk by Adam Campin. A link, of course, is in the show notes. Now, this brings me on to our book that we're going to be reading throughout January, and it's Composting by Bob Flowerdew. Bob Flowerdew is well-known gardening presenter, Radio 4 Question Time, a very knowledgeable person. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he has to say about composting. Well, that brings us up to the end of this week's podcast. Thank you so much for joining me. If you've enjoyed it, then please leave a rate and review on your podcast provider. Now, since last week, I've received quite a few reviews. Firstly, on iTunes, Mary E. Lee. She says, really enjoyable podcast. Thank you. Thank you very much for that comment yourself, Mary. Over on YouTube, Stuart Jackson says, yet another great podcast, Richard. Why is it that home gardeners are so happy they don't have to pay for gym memberships and they are outside enjoying themselves? Thanks again, Richard. Stuart, thank you very much, Stuart. And then on Spotify, we have had Lynn, who says, what a fantastic year, Podcast Richards. I can't thank you enough. Your approach is inspirational. Can't wait for 2026. Straw bale gardening is top of my list of new things to try. I'll let you know how it goes, Lynn. Yeah, we're going to be doing more straw bale gardening, more straw mulching. Lots going on in 2026 that I've learned from 2025. Also, Andy Phillips says, well done, Richard. Another great year of podcasts. And again, thank you very much, Andy, for that. And then finally on Podbean, Caro Trike, she says, is your apple tree still producing fruit even though it has developed lean? The reason I ask is because if you train branches, I have heard that a 45-degree angle is better for fruit production. Unless it's lying on the ground, you may not need to worry. Love the podcast. Well, in answer to that, my tree was leaning over pretty much more than a 45-degree angle, but it did still produce fruit. But I have lifted it up straight now. But it is true, if you train your branches, you can actually train an apple tree at an angle. Cordon apple trees are often trained in such a way, and they still produce plenty of fruit. This is something that I'm really enjoying doing now, is training fruit trees and bushes into different shapes and sizes to try and make the most of the space that we have. It's a lot of fun, I have to say. Thank you so much to everybody that has left a comment. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please do consider becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. Details on there at theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk, which is, of course, our website where you can leave a comment on the bottom of a blog post, or you can leave us a voicemail using our Speak Pipe service. We really appreciate everything that we get. If you want to email me, it's richard@theveggrowerpodcast.co.uk. Again, I've had a few emails over the last couple of weeks, which has also been very, very grateful. And don't forget, you can find me on social media. I'm on pretty much every platform. Please do give us a follow. Right, well, that will be it for this week. We will be back again next time. So until then, please take care.